be afraid to try different things, because even though you may ideally want to do this direction, you may think it makes perfect sense, but until you actually are very deep into it, you actually won't understand fully what it takes to succeed in that particular business.
Hi, Yinan. Thanks for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me on your channel, V. My name is Yinan. I'm the managing partner of Bay Street Group. We started this company back in 2015 with 5 people, and now we grew to over 1,000 agents in our company. And I personally have done many different career paths, and real estate has led me to where I am now. But before becoming a realtor and starting a real estate brokerage, I was on a path to becoming an actuary for the longest time in my life. Since university, I did take actuarial science major with a finance option in the University of Waterloo for my undergrad. And I did many actuarial co-ops, including pension consulting, and different types of actuarial reporting, and including the government Worker Safety Insurance Board. Many actuarial experience had led me to working in data analytics and modeling after I graduated. After many years in the bank, I decided to start my own business during my time in the Rotman MBA. And that's where my career shifted to what it is today.
I guess that's also why I'm having you on the channel, because you study actuarial science and then experienced many different career paths before you decided to go into real estate. So like, what made you to decide to the actual profession is not for you?
Despite the fact that I did many actuarial science co-op terms, the reason I went into the banking industry in 2009 when I graduated, one of the reasons was because there weren't that many actuarial jobs during that time, given it was the financial crisis, and probably the worst time to be looking for a job. And the banking analytics was one of the first job openings I was able to find and I get an offer from. And that has got me to start in the bank. But I figured, because I did a lot of actuarial modeling and statistics for my background, it wasn't a hard transition into a banking statistics and modeling team. And I wanted to transition over time to the insurance arm of the bank. However, there weren't many opportunities for me to transition over there. And I did find the department I was at working on the analytics and modeling regarding different types of risk was also quite interesting, and wanted me to explore further in that field. And after 2.5 years in risk modeling, I transitioned into finance, which was also part of my undergrad option. And I learned a lot during that time in the financing team, working on the acquisition for one of the major credit card firms by the bank. So that has led me to wanting to stay in that team and see how that process goes. And after that, I went into the product management because I wanted to try more front office and P&L management in the bank. And honestly, product was probably one of the more interesting teams in the bank, given that banking industry generally are more traditional and slower moving. So I wanted to be in the front of the P&L and feel like I'm managing a small business within a larger firm. So that was why I got into product management in the bank. And at that point, I was pretty far from where I started in terms of actuarial path. And because I haven't really been actively pursuing further exams during those few years. So that has led me to decide to just move forward without the actuarial science path as originally planned.
I see. Yeah. And then I guess you also found that working in bank is not your passion yet. Since eventually it seems like you get into real estate. So like what helped you to like navigate your profession journey in order to like eventually find your current passion then?
Yes, that's a good question. Real estate and banking or actuarial science seems very different, a very different path. But I think the major differentiating factor is the decision I made to start my own business. And real estate happened to be the business I was able to succeed in. It wasn't necessarily had to be real estate, because during my MBA, or even before my MBA years, I took a part-time MBA during that time, so I could manage my full-time job and starting a business on the side at the same time without committing full-time to school. And I felt like that was a really good decision because it really allowed me to learn new things while exploring different options and without losing any opportunity cost from committing into one thing during that time. I actually tried a few different paths in terms of entrepreneurship. And I did go into a startup company and I acted as their CFO. And we actually did raise funding, and we were able to move forward pretty far and get investors. And that was one of the first entrepreneurial directions. And at the same time, the real estate company also was starting, and I happened to be very interested in the real estate space since I was very young. Like I was doing property management for my family. I started buying my own investment properties in 2008. And so by that time, I already had ample experience in real estate as a real estate investor and manager. I just wasn't a licensed professional, nor did I have my own company. So when Bay Street Group was starting up, and it felt like a natural transition or natural opportunity I had to participate in. And just because there's a lot of synergies based on my experience and the type of directions I want to pursue, because my MBA years also was spent with a minor in real estate development. Mm-hmm. So I actually was on a path to becoming a builder or maybe a CFO in the builder, and I was getting offers for those. But instead of working for a builder, I felt being part of a real estate company and having my own business would be better than the builder path, which, ironically, I ended up working a lot closer with the builders as their partners in my later years. So it feels like I'm still working for the builders today. Yeah, so that was one of my few different options when I was exploring what business I should take on and what business I wanted to be in. And the startup business, it kind of went into a natural growth state where it could sustain on its own and become more of a cash cow business instead of a aggressive expansion. So it no longer requires me to be actively involved. So I could shift my focus into the real estate company that was growing really fast. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we started with 5 people in the basement. It was a very cliche story where how a startup started, and we grew to over 1,000 people today. During the past, during these years, I felt the real estate business was the right one for me to put all my energy into, and it has paid off really well. So that's how I kind of transitioned into the real estate. Not necessarily was the only choice, but it was from a few trial and error, and eventually I found my space. But the key is that I wanted to do my own business instead of working in a corporate for the rest of my life, and this will happen to be the option I found that best suits me after a few trial and error.
And that's very impressive. And then starting a business is very challenging. So well done on like your own business and the growth that you have right now. So it's like, did you know that you wanted to start a business before, and then that's why you applying for an MBA, or because like you went into the MBA and then it shift your mindset?
I always knew I wanted to do my own business even before the MBA. That's why I did my GMAT actually a few years even before the MBA started, because I knew I wanted to take on this further education, because my undergrad was only focused on math and actuarial science and finance. There weren't a lot of breadth of knowledge to become a successful business person. It was very specialized. So I knew like there are further education I needed. So I took on the GMAT early. The moment I started the MBA, I knew this was the time for me to make a change. Whether starting my own business is the right change or not, that I also explored it during the MBA, where I participated in many competitions and different types of like career path, like consulting or investment banking, or even working for the VCs, and I was able to succeed in many of those competitions by working with the people actually working in those industries and really get a feel of what their day-to-day type of work is like. So that gave me ample opportunity to try different things as well. And the entrepreneurial direction I was pursuing still drew more interest from me than the other ones. So I knew, starting my own business was the right solution or the right direction after exploring all my options. And MBA was really good at being able to provide those opportunities to explore, because you are working with like people actually in those industries that you're interested in, and you can talk to them and work with them to actually see what their jobs are like. Gives you like a mini taste, and so you can better assess whether it's the right thing for you. So MBA helped me to further confirm my interest of direction in starting my own business versus working in one of those other career options. And the rest becomes, like I mentioned before, exploring a few different options within starting my own business direction. And then I figured the real estate was the better option among the other business options.
So it's like you are a very successful broker, like being top 1% in the GTA. And your company's model is like is highly analytical and outstanding service. So I can say that it has a focus on analytical aspect, and I think it's because it's coming from that you have a strong quantitative background. Do you think that's actually it helped with your path to become having a successful company?
Yes, definitely. The analytics background has helped me in I would say 3 ways. One is for our clients, because I have developed real estate data models that can closely track all the market movements on a weekly and a monthly basis, in terms of all the indicator ratios, as well as tracking people's population migration between different regions, and tracking the builders' activities in their starts, completions, and units under construction, etc., within Canada on very different regions and very specific regions. So I can really keep an eye on what's going on in the entire real estate industry, whether it's the new development or resale market, as well as the population movements, new immigrants, and where people are going, right? So that helped me to not only be able to answer questions to my clients really well, but also being able to give them recommendations, especially to investors, on how they could plan their investments, and where are the areas with the higher potentials, and what is the current market behaving like. Is this the better time for them to buy, hold, or sell? I could back up my recommendations with very factual information so that they understand and can believe my recommendations with actual proof of data. The second part, how it helped me, is the second part of how the analytics has helped me is I'm able to work closely with the developers, so that the developers can rely on my recommendations and expertise in the market when they are planning their rollout for the new projects. Because builders often very good at forecasting their costs. How much material, how much labor, and what does it take to actually get a project done? How much does it cost? But how much to charge for each unit, actually, they are one step away from the actual customer, right? They don't really talk to customers as much as we do, being in the market, doing transactions all the time. So they often rely on us in terms of providing inputs on their forecasting models. How much should I charge for these like 8 different types of units that I have in one project to achieve their goal, maximizing their profit, but also having a confidence level that this project will sell out within like X period of time, whether it was 1 month or 3 months or 6 months. Different builders have different requirements. Of course, the longer they plan to sell out, the higher price they could charge. And what are the pricing models they can charge by a phased rollout? Those actually the builders need our inputs a lot more than one would think in terms of how to price those units and how to price their different phase of rollouts so that they make sure the project can actually sell out within the right amount of time, given the right price. Too fast, too slow, too high, too low, neither is good, right? It has to be just right. So that part, I was able to provide a lot of inputs to various builders by working closely with them, become their trusted advisor, even though I don't work for the builder as an employee, but being a real estate brokerage partner and one of their major partners for rolling out and starting out their projects, I'm actually being able to work with the builders a lot more closely in the key areas that really matters to them. And the third area is that I'm able to leverage my analytics to develop my own real estate investment course so that I could actually share my knowledge and through a platform to various different organizations and investor groups that are interested in learning more about real estate investment. And having these analytics background definitely provides a lot more credibility in being able to teach somebody else how to invest their money.
So I didn't think about the pricing aspect of like how you help with the builders and the developers. So technically, it's just like even like the actuary is like helping with pricing insurance products, and then in this case, like you're helping with pricings of different unit and stuff. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting about that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about running a business. What would be your advice to those who would want to start something on their own, especially who are working in like corporate jobs and looking for a transition into having their own business?
Okay, great question. So for those of you who wants to transition from corporate into business world, I have 3 recommendations for you based on my own personal experience. One is that take small steps, right? And take actions before making a perfect strategic plan. I know in corporate, often we need to make a long presentation, lots of PowerPoints before we take actions, right? That's generally how corporates likes to do work because there's a lot of factors and a lot of decision makers in every decision in a large corporation. But small business, it's quite the opposite. Sometimes you have to take steps to figure out what's the next step. It's hard to plan out every step of the way until success because there's too many changes and too many, I would say, trial and errors that has to happen, right? Just like even starting a YouTube channel, I'm sure you can speak to that, right? It's not you can just plan out everything. Like things has to change directions, topics, and audience. Some people start a few different YouTube channels before they can find the right audience, right? So. But if you don't go through those kind of like failed experience, you cannot find the one that's successful, right? So one has to take steps, take actions quicker, and put actions before a perfect plan. I would say that's the number one thing. And 2 is don't be afraid to try different things because even though you may ideally want to do this direction, you may think it makes perfect sense, but until you actually are very deep into it, you actually won't understand fully what it takes to succeed in that particular business. No matter what others tell you, you can learn from somebody who's successful in this business. They can tell you, oh, it takes these things to be successful. it's actually often not. Okay, they're not going to actually tell you a lot of the truth, right? They cannot tell you unless you're like their family or something. So you have to sort of learn it yourself, and so that's why you have to like put yourself into it and actually try it, right? Don't be afraid to try, even if this is not your ideal direction. But once you do it and try it, you may actually learn a lot from it, even though you know you're not gonna, maybe it's not your long-term option, but if you think it will help you to find your right path, then definitely that experience will help you learn something that will eventually help you to find the right direction. So don't be afraid to try things that are outside of your comfort zone or outside of your expected directions or options. And the third is, you really need to know what is your unique advantage in the business that you choose to take in the long term, because everybody has a different set of skill sets. Everybody has their strengths and weakness. It will be really hard for you to use your weakness to compete against somebody else's strengths, especially in a business world. Because in a corporate world, everybody on the same level, let's say you're both a senior analyst or you're both a manager, you would be very similarly compensated, and your requirements are quite similar, and you could quickly learn to make up things you're not quite good at, and use the things you are good at, because the requirements are pretty standard and expected, right? So you know what to work on. But in the business world, two business person, like two realtors or two like salesperson or two like restaurants, like they could have very similar nature of work, but the results are vastly different, right? Like I mentioned in GTA, like something like 80% of the realtors cannot even make a living, right? The income they're getting is not sufficient to make a full-time living. Because like the difference is very large between individuals, even though they are in the same line of work. So you really never know what you're competing against and what it actually takes to succeed. So that's why I make sure that the line of work you choose has to be able to really utilize things that you are very good at, or if you have any unique resources, then that's like better than most of the other competitors where you can utilize efficiently. That will give you a long-term advantage in being able to become the top like 5% or even top like 2% of all the people in that business. And almost in all business world, is the top few percentage takes the vast majority of the revenue and benefits in that particular line of business. It's really rare to see a business that has every participant almost equally paid or equally successful. It's very rare to see that. So you have to be like the best of the best to succeed in that line of work. So what can you bring into it that actually can outcompete others? That's something you really have to figure out. You may not figure out from day one. Like I mentioned, don't be afraid to try different things. And that's the process you actually use and take to figure that out, right? You may not know what your unique advantage is yet, but you'll figure it out as you try different things and do different types of work that are outside of your typical comfort zone, right? And then you figure it out over time. And don't be afraid to give up, right? Or say no to a line of work that if you have tried and decided, you know what, this is not for me. But if you have found the line of work you believe that has a good chance of being successful at in the long term, then really keep at it, right? Maybe this is a fourth recommendation I'll just add to it. Really keep at it until you've sort of unlocked the next stage, right? Because in every line of work, the beginning is always hard. It's almost like a hockey stick where you have to build up over time to succeed, like, to find your quick rise of success, right? So being able to commit in that line of work that you have found that yourself, to being able to utilize your strengths and your advantages and being able to succeed at or achieve some beginning success, then don't forget you have to keep committing and keep pushing until you can reach the next level of stage in every business, because there are hidden levels in every business that you have to unlock. And unless you become, no matter how good you did in the first year or two, that's just the beginning, right? There's always better opportunities or more efficient ways to run the business. after a few years of accumulation of experience and customer base, and then you can find that next level, right? So you have really, once you find your line of work, you really have to push it through and keep at it for years before you can find the true secret sauce of how to be able to succeed in the long term of this business.
Very great advices. Yeah. I can resonate with it a lot with like as you say, my YouTube channel and how trial and errors, and yeah, with my photography business as well. Yeah, so like I agree, it's just the 80-20 rule as well. Like the top 20 gonna be the one that actually generates the most revenue or having the most business volume. And yeah, it's take a lot of trial and error and perseverance, and it's also a game of numbers too. If you see that something that have high probability of success, then yeah, put more effort into to try to make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. Like once you find that type of work that really you feel like utilize all of your things you're good at, then really explore that option, right? Because that could be the one.
Yeah. So like for running your own business, what do you find is the most challenging?
The most challenging aspect for running, I think, any business is time management, right? Because you're no longer paid by the hour like you used to in the corporate world. So you can clearly measure, okay, how much value I'm adding or what exactly I'm planning out my work and how much I'm getting paid, right? In the business world is 1 or 0, right? The customer either pay or don't pay. Right. There's, I mean, and there are some type of work like being a lawyer, you can charge by the hours too, but there's different challenges in different careers. But for most businesses, it's you have to be very result oriented, and you sometimes don't know how long it takes to get to those results, right? Often for your first like 10 customers, you probably feel like you're working way under minimum wage, right? To get it done. And it constantly is a challenge, right? How do you manage your time? Like when you have no customers, when you have like a lot of customers, they both present challenges, right? So I would say being able to efficiently use your time and being able to work well with a team, those are, I would say, for any business owners, those will be the key, because finding and working with the right team is also very challenging, and often it's not often it takes years to fine tune like the structure or responsibilities like within your team and find the right people. And sometimes like you can't just always find your friends to work for you, right? Like it doesn't work like that always. Like you really have to manage it like a business. So yeah, like time and people management, I would say is the hardest parts, and there's no the right formula for it, right? You cannot just read a book and talk to somebody who's I mean they will help, right? Reading books and talking to people who have done the same line of work as you did will definitely help, but you cannot just replicate their methods because everybody has a very different, like every successful business has a very different formula. And the reason they're successful among all the existing competitors, like if you are able to succeed in the line of work that's already fairly competitive, that means you found something new, right? You cannot hardly succeed in a competitive field just by repeating the same things others are doing. There'll be always somebody else doing it better than you because they started earlier, they have more resources, they have done it better for longer, right? So you cannot compete in the same way as those people who are ahead of you. So you have to find something new in your business in order to succeed in a competitive field. And that something new is the hard part because you cannot learn or replicate any formulas. You have to find your own ways to manage your time and manage your people. And most businesses cannot succeed with just one person, right? Otherwise, it's called a self-employee, right? Which you can be like, like a professional type of work. That works, right? But if you wanted to run like a business, you have to work with people, and finding out something new and figuring out how to manage your time, your people's time to actually work with that new formula where nobody else has done, right? That's I would say the key challenge for most people or most businesses, and that's why most businesses probably fail. just because they can't find the right way, even if they found the formula, but they can't make the time and people to work with that new formula, right? So execution, it matters even more than the idea itself.
Yeah, totally agree. I think this actually remind me of my MBA time as well when talking about innovation. And it's like you need to find something that to do better in your, like what you say, do better. And better here can be like maybe more efficient in doing things. So you can save more time and then you can produce more output, or you can find a different way completely to create maybe new products or new market, or yeah. So like all of these to find your own niche market, for example. So you have to find something unique that as you from your earlier advice, but like your unique advantage and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So any words of wisdoms for those who are interested in starting their real estate career? Like what do you think are the most important qualities to be successful in this career?
In the real estate field, I'm assuming we're talking about starting as a realtor, because there's many different directions in the real estate industry. But if you wanted to start as a realtor, like I did, then I would say there are 3 suggestions I can give you. One is that be prepared, depending on where you're coming from, what type of line of work you are coming from. Assuming the audience of this channel is mostly coming from corporate, then be very prepared for having no pay for a long time. Okay, that's and that's true. Honestly, like one of my like colleagues from the banks, he was actually my manager before, and he recently started out as a realtor as well, right? Like he's like, hey, you did this like many years ago, and now he wants to try it too. And the reason he's doing it is because all his children has gone to university. He no longer has a mortgage, and he feels like, he wanted to try something new because he has very little responsibilities left in terms of financially, and his wife is still working full time. So it allows him to try, right? And he's prepared to have a long period of transition with no pay. And you have to invest a lot into it too, right? Like your courses, like they're not cheap. Your all the investments to start a business. There's always like, office, right? You're all printing all your business cards and signs and, getting it ready, or maybe somebody, gets a new car, right? Because, some people think realtors need better cars, right? So then there's a lot of upfront expenses to do that. And you probably have very small success for a long time. Where people start with like very small deals, like rental deals, and which don't pay a lot, but at least you got to start somewhere, right? So that's my recommendation. Number 1 is be prepared financially and gain your entire family's support, right? Because family support is like key to like everything in this business, which leads to my second point is be prepared in terms of time commitment. Right. So my first recommendation was be prepared financially. Second is time, because the expectation for how long you work, or how many hours you work, or which hours you work during the day is going to be very, very different than the corporate world. During the pandemic, I think a lot of people feel like their corporate working hours has expanded even longer, right? Because you can work from home. But times that by like 10, right? That's sort of, not in terms of total hours, but in terms of the expansion of hours, right? Like if you message me like 11, 12 midnight, like I often will respond to you, right? If it's something, important from the clients. There's really no off hours. Like I basically start working the moment I wake up, and I still responding to issues and messages the moment before I sleep or before I put my phone down into a sleep mode, right? Like that's how long the workday is, and 24/7. Well, not 24/7, like every day of the year, right? Even when I'm on vacations, and there's never a time where you can truly be unplugged. You could, but you're not going to be as and especially, you could try to do the work-life balance thing where you completely just cuts off after, like, say, 7 o'clock. But in a people-oriented service world, especially in this world where people generally think about real estate or go see houses or have family discussions or they have questions after work hours, right? Nobody is going to really be actively, looking for houses during their work day. So your clients are all working during off hours, or at least half of your clients are doing that. So if you set too strict a policy in terms of your time, especially in your beginning years, say, oh, I'm not going to work after 7, you're going to have a even harder time to find the success you're looking for, right? So, and that requires a lot of family commitment and family support. Like if your family is very against you, being stick to your phone like after your work hours, then you're gonna have a lot of trouble, right, in managing that. And there's no right or wrong, right? Like family is most important, and often we talk about work-life balance, but in reality, like I feel like work is part of the life too, because it kind of supports the family, like financially, which is kind of the fundamental for most families, unless you're like a trust fund baby or something, right? So, that's the second point, is getting your family support on the time and know like what kind of time expectations will be from you in this just general line of work. And the third recommendation I have is to start by working with somebody that you look up to or you trust, and somebody who's very experienced in this field who can guide you through your starting years, right? Because it is going to be a challenge for you to completely just on your own without any guidance. And there's a lot of ways to be more efficient if you just kind of know like how to navigate those challenges or how to resolve those conflicts and issues that you would have at the beginning of your business, like having somebody who can really guide you through that and willing to be your mentor and also be able to share with you some of that resource that they have to help you get started. That would be also very fundamental. Even if you're like doing the smaller deals and lesser pay, it still gathers experience, right? And then the experience is what matters the most when you're starting out. So don't be afraid to work for somebody else during your beginning years.
Great advices. And yeah, thanks again for being on the channel today and share on your journey and experiences, going through different career paths, and then your tips on starting a business as well as in the real estate industry.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.